Hey, we've all been in that moment where people are counting on you to be creative, to provide a brilliant idea, and frankly, you got nothing. Today, we're going to kick off a brand new series to highlight Mental Health Awareness Month called The Psychology of Creativity, beginning with mental blocks. Let's get into it. Well, y'all, I'm so humbled and honored to be able to spend the next 4 weeks with you talking about this topic of where mental health and creativity collide, and something that I'm calling the psychology of creativity. We've got some very special guests lined up for the podcast coming up during this series that I cannot wait to share these conversations with you. Before we get into that, I just want to remind you of a couple of things. Number one, I'm here for you. Everything that I do is to help creatives know themselves, their process, and their teams better so that you can create greater things together. I also want to put a disclaimer out there right here at the top. I'm not a mental health professional, and these are just my observations of my journey, what I've seen work in creative team environments and solo creative endeavors. And so as we get into these things, I just want you to know this is not any kind of professional, certified, licensed advice. I just need you to know that up front. This is what I'm hoping is the start of a conversation with you and your team about these topics so that you can kind of work through them yourselves, or maybe you can, it's something that you want to bring me in to help discuss with you and your team as well. If you're listening to this on an audio podcast platform, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to me. I would super appreciate you to leave a 5-star rating and review. It helps get this content out to people just like you who are having these discussions and conversations and leaning into these topics as well. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm so glad that you're here. I would love for you to like this particular video by hitting the thumbs up button. If you haven't already, I would really appreciate you to subscribe and ring the bell as well so that you're notified every time new content drops, which we drop this podcast every single Thursday. You can follow along with everything that I've got going on Instagram. Already said, like YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, all those places you can find me at Dustin Peed, P-E-A-D. Or if there's anything that we're discussing that I can help guide you or your team in, I would love to chat with you. So go to dustinpeed.com, click on the Let's Talk button, and let's hop on my calendar and have a conversation about how I might be able to help you. As I was preparing kind of the weight of this series, I want you to know that I didn't enter into this lightly. And there are so many topics and so many different areas of mental health that need to be discussed. And if you're straight struggling today mentally, I want you to know a couple things. Number one, I want you to know that I care deeply about you, and that this world needs you, and do not give up. And seek help. It's okay. It's a strong thing to do, to seek help when you're struggling mentally. I know not everybody knows what's going on in between your ears, but that's why we need each other. And that's why we need help. And so I love taking this month and this opportunity to kind of talk about some of these things. But specifically this month, we're going to kind of talk about how mental health and creativity collide. So it's not going to be quite as weighty here at the beginning of the series. Towards the end of the series, we're going to dive into some more serious topics. But listen, I was looking up some research and about mental blocks, and the Sage Neuroscience Center talks about mental blocks this way. It says a mental block is your brain reaching a barrier in accessing creativity, motivation, or productivity. Just kind of a straight up definition that a mental block is a barrier from you reaching the information that you're hoping to access. But it also says, like any machine, things can short circuit, or sometimes things are running a little slow, and you might just need a reset. I want to emphasize that again. You might just need a reset. Listen, mental blocks can be incredibly frustrating because you're the only one that really knows that you're in it, right? Because it's mental. It's not a t-shirt that you wear. It's not an expression. It's often not spoken of because you can have some shame associated with it. But it's difficult, right? Because no one knows these things. And so there's some common mental blocks that I want to go through with you today. There's just three of them. There's all sorts of mental blocks, but there's three common ones that I want to go through with you today and how I've been able to overcome them. People in my life have been able to overcome them, and maybe these things might work for you too. I'm not saying they 100% will, but they certainly could, and they're worth a shot. So the first mental block that we need to overcome is familiarity. We often get stuck in our familiar way of looking at things. And if we're honest with ourselves, we could say, listen, a lot of the world's problems are because we only like to look at things the way that we prefer to look at them and not see things from other people's point of view. And we know that like in society, that can be a problem. So it would also equally be a problem in our own brain as well if we get stuck in our familiar ways of looking at things. When we face a problem, we tend to fail to see a number of viable options because we can get trapped in this own way of thinking. So one thing that I do on a regular basis, I do these quarterly, is a creative refuel day. Again, we heard earlier from the Sage Neuroscience Center that sometimes we might just need a reset. This is my reset. I do a creative refuel day where I go out and I do something out of my comfort zone, beyond my normal medium of creativity, and I just experience it for what it is. I'm okay with it being new. I'm okay with me not really understanding what it is, but I'll go see a movie that might be slightly out of it. I might go to an art exhibit that might be kind of push my comfort zone a little bit. Whatever it is, I want to expand my familiarity. That's going to help me mentally, hopefully, get out of this block. It helps me. When I do it, for sure, I usually come back from those creative refuel days super refreshed with all sorts of new ideas, and I think it could super help you as well. The second mental block I want to talk about is freezing. Freezing. Now, I'm not talking about how it's March and it might still be cold where you're listening to this at. I'm talking about how a person can have so much invested in a project that they freeze when they try to come up with a solution because they're nervous about it being the right decision. And that's a real mental block that you just get so stuck, you freeze, right? That mental block is that barrier. You get so stuck in, I don't know if this is the right thing to do because I've got so much invested into it at this point. I don't want to have to go back and start all over from the beginning. Can I just say, if you're afraid of having to go back and start all over at the beginning, that is a sign of laziness. That is a sign that you aren't willing to put in the work in to get it right, that you just want to get, you're more concerned about getting it done than getting it right. And so I need you to understand as lovingly as possible that sometimes you might have to go back and start all over again, and that's okay. But here's some things that I do if I feel like I'm frozen on a project and I just can't seem to figure out what move is right next. And you'll kind of sense a theme here with these things that I'll do. I'll either take a walk, I'll take a shower, or I will exercise. Now, the theme there is that all of them are physical activities. We know, scientifically proven, that physical activity is has a direct impact on your mental activity. And so if you can take a break to take a walk, take a shower, exercise, do anything other than what your work calls for, and it's a physical activity, it'll give your brain a break that it needs, and it will often lead to unexpected breakthrough. Think about how many great ideas you have in the shower. Think about how creative you feel, or how energized or mentally sharp you feel after you exercise. Now, I know going into exercise, it's not super fun, but when you leave it, you're like, man, I feel like $1 million right now. I feel like I could conquer the world. That's because there's a direct correlation between your physical activity and your mental health and your mental activity as well. So if you froze up on a project, if that's the mental block that you have, get out and do something physical. The last mental block is one that we've talked about a lot over the past couple of weeks leading into this series, but it's still one that I think is probably the most dominant and popular mental block of all, and that is fear. Fear. Listen, the stakes could be really high, and you might be unwilling at some level to entertain different potential creative solutions or taking the steps towards completing a project because you're afraid of what might happen. You're afraid that you might not get the credit. You're afraid it might fail. You're afraid that people may see you for who you really are. You're afraid of being vulnerable. Whatever the fear is, it's there and it's real, and that is a real mental block. Listen, I can just encourage you that fear that is in you is not you. It's not of yourself. It is a spiritual force that is coming against you to stop you from living your most creative self and being the most creative as possible. And so that fear is not something that has been given to you as a gift. It is a curse, and you need to understand to move it aside and pursue anyway. Move fear aside and pursue anyway. One of my favorite quotes of a quote of all time, because we often get like inception layers of quotes. You're going to know it as soon as I say it. And probably even before I finish it, you're going to know who said it and who quoted the person saying it. It's this: you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, quoted by Michael Scott. That's right. If you know me, I love The Office. And so I love this quote, and it's so true. Obviously, Wayne Gretzky had it right, and Michael Scott knew what he was talking about when he said, listen, I'm going to miss 100% of the shots I don't take. If I don't take a shot here, then I have a 100% chance of failure because nothing, I won't be able to accomplish it. I have to at least try. And so in order to break the mental block of fear, I'm asking you to believe truth, and I'm asking you to simply try. Simply try. As we learned before, if you fail, which we've talked about in the last couple of weeks, it's just an opportunity for you to learn, right? Thomas Edison learned all these different ways not to create a light bulb, right? But he learned from those failures, and eventually he got the right way of doing it. And so, listen, I know I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but I need you to understand that in order to get past this fear mental block, you have to just simply be willing to take a step of faith and try. Get out there and attempt what it is that you want to. And worst case scenario, you learn something from it. Best case scenario, it's a huge success. Get out there and try. So if you need help with getting through any of these creative blocks, first of all, I would say contact a mental health professional and see if there's something deeper that maybe these tips that I gave you weren't really helping. Definitely contact a mental health professional. But if you need help implementing some of these tips that I've kind of mentioned here on this episode, I would love to talk to you about that. You can hop on my calendar for free at dustinp.com, click on the Let's Chat button, and we will work through these mental blocks together. Next week, we're going to continue our series, The Psychology of Creativity, celebrating Mental Health Awareness Month in the United States, by talking about the biggest buzzword out there right now, mindset. Mindset is everything. And so everybody else is talking about it. We're going to talk about it here too. We're really going to kind of dig into what this buzzword really means. I cannot wait to talk to you next time on Creativity Made Easy.